Good morning, students. I have Aubrey and Grady helping me with today's lesson. We are going to be doing another lesson on complex carbohydrates. And to start with, I've got 5 things on the table. Grady, can you tell us what is on the table?
Tartar sauce, wing sauce, chocolate, salad dressing, and muffin mix.
Okay, now is there anything you can think of that these 5 items would have in common? They don't seem to have anything in common, do they?
No way.
I mean, when we look at the ingredients in them and we look at the way they taste, chocolate's sweet, salad dressing is savory, wing sauce is spicy, and muffin mix would be sweet too. What would they possibly have in common? Okay, Aubrey, take a look at the ingredients. There's something I've highlighted on a few of those labels. Can you see what ingredient it is that those things all have in common?
This one's highlighted in Xanthan Gum. This one's highlighted in Xanthan Gum. This one's highlighted in Xanthan Gum. This one's highlighted in...
That's it. They all have xanthan gum in them. They all have xanthan gum, even the muffin mix. So that brings up a question. What is xanthan gum? Do either of you know what xanthan gum is?
Nope.
Nope. Have any of you students ever heard of xanthan gum? You may not have. So our lesson today is on gums, and Aubrey's going to switch the camera around and show. Hi, Grady. My little board here. I upgraded. I got a bigger board now. So gums are a common ingredient that we use in food, and it's not the kind that you chew. Gums are agents that we use to thicken foods, to give foods a bigger texture. We also use them as emulsifiers. And they come from sources like seeds, roots, tree sap, bacteria. Yep, that xanthan gum that we just talked about, that comes from bacteria. Bacteria work on and ferment sugar and create a kind of almost like a slimy coating to the sugar mixture that they're in, and then we dry out that slimy coating, and that's xanthan gum. Believe it or not, that's what it is. And we get gum from seaweed. Believe it or not, seaweed is probably in your chocolate milk that you drink. It's called carrageenan, and it's an old thickening agent that was used for centuries in Ireland, and it comes from red seaweed. So these sources of gums can be kind of unusual, but gums are also very important because we use them for these things in food. Now, you might not know what it means to emulsify something. Emulsify means to bind together two things that typically don't combine. Think oil and water. All right, so the salad dressing. You use oil and you use an ingredient like vinegar, and typically vinegar and oil aren't going to combine, but Sal's Island dressing wouldn't look very pretty if it was separated. So we add something like xanthan gum to our Thousand Island dressing to keep it together. The xanthan gum helps to bind and emulsify those ingredients. Now, xanthan gum also serves as a texturizing agent when it comes to gluten-free cooking. So our gluten-free muffins that we're going to make today include xanthan gum as a replacement for the gluten. Remember, gluten is that protein that we find in grains that's used to give bread its doughy texture. When you take the gluten out, you've got to put something in that's going to return that texture, and so that's the xanthan gum. All right, so today's lesson is going to be on gums. And some of the common gums, like I said, are xanthan gum, gum alginate, which is coming from seaweed. We also have, Grady, please get down. We also have gum carrageenan, which comes from seaweed, and that's used in chocolate milk. And then we have even things like agar that come from gums. So for our recipe here that we're going to make today, we're going to get our other things out of the way. We have our xanthan gum containing gluten-free muffin mix. So we are going to add this into our bowl along with some melted butter, 6 tablespoons of melted butter. You can also use oil if you don't want to use butter or you don't have butter. We're going to add our muffin mix. And again, you might notice that looks a little more powdery than your muffin mix typically. It's because xanthan gum is a very fine powder. In order to make this muffin mix completely gluten-free, they also used potato starch and tapioca starch instead of using wheat flour. So it has a very different consistency to it. So we're going to add our butter and our milk first to our batter and get that mixed up. And again, you can see it looks a little bit different a little bit smoother. It almost looks like mashed potatoes. It looks a little bit different than what you would see if you were using something like wheat flour in your muffin mix. And that's one of the differences with xanthan gum. It's much smoother than flour when it comes to creating a batter. So this is one of the reasons why some cooks like to use xanthan gum. We're going to crack our 3 eggs and add them in.
And then we're going to mix it up.
Okay, yep. Now our eggs are also going to help as emulsifiers because eggs, as you will learn in our next unit on fats and proteins, eggs have the ability to bind together ingredients. So eggs are a great way to bring ingredients that would normally not want to combine together. This is what makes mayonnaise work, is you put eggs in mayonnaise, and that's what brings your oil and your vinegar and your mayonnaise together. Okay, so we got a nice looking batter there. Again, you can see how smooth this stuff is. It's really different than your normal muffin batter that you'd make with flour. We're going to add our frozen blueberries, 1.5 cups of frozen blueberries here.
So we're going to have blueberry muffins.
That's right, we're going to have beautiful blueberry muffins. All right, now our next task is to separate out our batter into our muffin cups that we already have sitting over here. And again, the big difference here is that these do not contain any gluten, so they contain no wheat. And typically wheat flour is what we would use to form our batter for something like a muffin. So these muffins are going to have a little bit of a different texture when we bake them. We'll take a look at them when they come out of the oven and see how different they are. But this is one of the cool ways that people who are not able to digest gluten can still enjoy baked goods, is by using things like xanthan gum. So even though getting bacteria to ferment sugar and extracting some gel away from that sounds like a really, I don't know, sci-fi way to cook, it's an important product, and it's really helped a lot of people that couldn't tolerate gluten to begin with to enjoy foods that they would miss out on if they weren't able to bake with wheat products. Xanthan gum, as I mentioned, is also very commonly used in things like salad dressings and sauces where we don't want the ingredients to separate. So the xanthan gum helps to stabilize those ingredients. And that's, again, where we see things like gum alginate used. That's where we see things like gum arabic used. Gum arabic comes from the sap of an acacia tree. We also see things like carrageenan used extensively in dairy beverages. So chocolate milk, strawberry milk, anything where you would have some kind of a powder like cocoa powder that you would not want to have separating away from the rest of your ingredients in the beverage is where you're going to see those gums and those thickeners types of ingredients used. So they're fascinating ingredients to study. I know a few years ago I received a kit full of gums from a food company, and I was able to make gummy worms with them. I was able to make all kinds of like really interesting sauces and stuff with these gums. They have crazy thickening powers. So you can use just a little bit of them and they'll go a long, long way. Sometimes gums are used because they're more tolerant. They smell good. Sometimes they're more tolerant to temperature. So certain gums actually work better than cornstarch at higher temperatures. And some of them work really well with low temperatures too. And they'll be stable in the refrigerator maybe longer than some other source of a thickener would be. All right, so again, these fall into that same category that we're studying of complex carbohydrates. We also call complex carbohydrates polysaccharides because they have many different chains of sugars, many different chains of those carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms. All right, so we've got just about all of our muffin cups all filled up. Scraping the last little bit of our batter out here. Ta-da! Okay, and now these are going to go into the oven for 15 minutes, and we'll take a look when they come out and see how they turned out. So we're going to see how these gluten-free muffins look in 15 minutes when they're done baking at 375. Okay, we're back. Our muffins are now out of the oven, and they've cooled down a little bit. You can see they look like regular muffins. They're all risen up, and I wanted to also go ahead and show you one that I split open. So you can see these muffins have the same crumbly texture that you would get if you were making muffins out of flour. So all that's left now, Aubrey, is to taste test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good. Yeah, honestly, I don't think you can tell a whole lot of difference
Between those
between
muffins?
these muffins and muffins that are made with flour. that would have gluten in it. So again, xanthan gum is a great substitute for gluten. It binds together your ingredients. If we did not use xanthan gum in these muffins, chances are really good they would be crumbly and they would fall apart and they wouldn't be able to hold together. So again, some of the things we learned about gums, they come from lots of sources like seeds, roots, tree sap, bacteria, seaweed. They're used to thicken, emulsify, and texturize food. For example, replacing gluten in bread. They are polysaccharides. They belong in the complex carb family. And here are some common ones that you can look and see if they are in your foods. Xanthan gum, gum arabic, carrageenan, and agar. So I hope you enjoyed learning about gums. We'll be back again with more lessons on complex carbs later.